As you walked onto set, you said to me, this is highly unlikely to actually ever be triggered. If that is the case, why are we doing this? Why is Europe pushing this forward? And can you explain why this is highly unlikely to ever be triggered?
Yes, we've finally seen the details of this measure that's been talked about for so long. And when the Commission were presenting it, they talked a lot about the reasons why it was needed. And it's to prevent the kind of price spikes that we saw in the summer happening next year as we're trying to refill gas storage.
Yep.
However, when we look at the conditions, we looked at what happened in the summer, and these conditions weren't met. So
even last summer, the conditions...
In August, what triggered the emergency talks and the crisis, the height of the crisis, this price cap wouldn't have been triggered. So therefore, things have to be even worse next winter or next summer in order for this to mean anything. So really what it is something to start talking about. But the reality of it is that, you know, we hope things will not ever be that bad again, let alone worse.
Rachel, how did they get to the 275 euro megawatt per hour? How did they get to that number?
It's hard to tell, but when you look at the chart of gas prices, it's sort of below the absolute peak, the record that we saw in August. So, you know, it's not really based on an average price or anything like that, but just slightly below the record level. And also the spread between gas prices and LNG prices for a period of time. Also, it's not immediately clear what the methodology for that is, other than it wasn't met, so it wouldn't have been triggered previously.
So ministers meet on Thursday. Are they going to sign off on this? Is this something that is going to be universally accepted? If I want a cap, if I want protection from what happened in August, why am I signing up for this?
Exactly that. We're expecting there to be some arguments over this, because if you were in favour of a cap, you haven't really got what you wanted. You've got a cap in name, but not really in reality. So they will discuss it on Wednesday and on Thursday, and we expect there to be a further meeting on this particular measure in December. But what the Commission want is that the broader package, the joint purchasing, the other measures, to be signed off at the meeting on Thursday, and for this price cap not to hold back the wider package, which at one point it looked like that could perhaps be the case.
Rachel, this is probably a dumb question, but is there anyone who understands the energy world in these meetings?
The energy ministers are supposed to have
like somebody
more knowledge than
who understands how things trade, and who understands things trade on exchanges, and who's moved stuff, and who's hedged things.
I guess that the ministers have more understanding than the heads of state about energy, but I've asked the same question, and they don't trust the market, they don't trust the traders, so they don't bring them into these discussions. They will have, you know, briefing papers, but they think it better to leave the kind of market players out of these discussions so that they can't influence policy in a way that, you know, policymakers don't want.
Or could be beneficial to the traders, potentially. Let's talk about what's happening with Ukraine. At the moment, still transiting Russian gas through Ukraine into Western Europe. The Russians' Gazprom today indicated that may be about to come to a halt next week. Now, there's always a kind of excuse which is behind the real reason why the Russians are doing what they're doing. Are we on that track now to the Russians effectively, just as it's about to get properly cold in Europe, cutting things off completely?
Yes, taken on the face of it, Moldova, it's a small amount of gas, but the key thing that Russia is saying is that Ukraine is keeping gas.
Yep.
So when they've said this before in the past, that has then been used to cut transit flows completely, and the market has been expecting this to happen. So we are watching to see if this is the trigger. This is what leads to that total cut-off, because this small cut-off on its own perhaps doesn't matter that much to the wider European market. Obviously, for Moldova, it's an issue, but it could be the beginning of, you know, a total cut-off in those transit flows.